I have been studying government for a long time, more than a quarter of a century. Can you believe it? I even have a bachelor's degree in political science, which is silly and ridiculous because there's no such thing as political science. That degree is a misnomer. It ought to just be called the study of government, right? Political science, give me a break. Believe in science, Bernie. But the way we view government, I think, and I think about it a lot, and I've read about it a lot, and I learned more about it after I got my bachelor's degree in political science from Cal State Fullerton in 2000. I believe it was 2000. Um, I learned more about it afterward. I feel like the Mark Twain quote, right? Never let school get in the way of your education. And so I kept reading and trying to understand government. And one of the biggest frustrations that I have and have had for a long time is this view of government from a right left spectrum, right? This linear view of government. And one reason I don't find it sufficient and satisfactory is because what used to be the left is no longer the left. And I'm talking about sometimes in a matter of a year. Let me give you an example. Well, I'll give you an example from a while back. I think of the Patriot Act. We talked about this the other day. The Patriot Act. I was against the Patriot Act when George Bush signed it into law. I said, if you think the federal government takes the war on drugs and intrudes in our lives in ways that are repugnant to the Constitution, the supreme law of the land, you just wait and see what they do with a war on terrorism. And here we are. All right. But back then, Republicans didn't like that I was opposed to the Patriot Act. Then, when Obama got elected in 2008, he was for the Patriot Act. He was against it before he was for it. All right. Kind of like Maximilien Robespierre in the French Revolution when he was against the guillotine until he got the guillotine. Then he loved it until his head was the last one that was lopped off. And then they put the guillotine away. The French Revolution, right after our revolution. A little different, though. Different principles, different situations, too, in fairness. But I want to share with you the way I view government. It is not linear. It's not right versus left. It is, it's a little more nuanced than that. And I'm going to share with you a video. It's probably 12 minutes long. I love this video. I go back and watch it probably about every year as a little refresher. And we'll look at the different types of government explained. And you can figure out, where do you think we are right now? What were we when we started? What's the best way? What's the best kind of government? It's a video put out by the John Birch Society probably 12 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe even longer than that. But it's fantastic. And just so you know, the John Birch Society is a nonprofit that is a constitutional activist type of an organization. If you look them up on Wikipedia, they're probably a right-wing conspiracy. But they're much more thoughtful than that. And the video is fantastic. And I'm going to share it with you and make some comments in between. I'm going to try to read your comments. If you have questions or arguments, we can do that too. But this is something I used to talk about on the radio a lot. And it's my opinion that one of the biggest problems that we're facing in America is that so many of us are more opinionated than we are informed, right? We're more opinionated than we are informed. And it's my opinion that we should pursue understanding, wisdom, and discernment as though they were riches. Did you get that? I really believe this. That's why I do this. I think that we should go after and chase wisdom and understanding and discernment as though they were riches. And if we did that, oh my gosh, things would be so much better. But it takes humility to do that. So this will be a little different, but I promise you, if you watch this, it will give you a new vantage point, a new way of seeing things. Who was it? There was a Supreme Court justice, Oliver Wendell Holmes. All right. But he had a great quote, and I love his quote. He said, "Man's mind stretched to a new idea never goes back to its original dimensions." So if you stick with me tonight, your mind will be stretched to new dimensions and it'll never go back. I mean, that's how big a deal this is. You got to admit there's nothing else over the next 20 or 30 minutes that's going to do that. Is there? I'm serious though. I'm going to start the video, comment on the video a little bit throughout right after this.
When your life is on the line, hire the lawyer who lives in our community, works in our community, and worships in our community. I'm Al Saulene, your Panama City Beach lawyer. 850-215-0628.
Don't let back pain and neck pain get you down. Find relief at Brown Chiropractic Center on St. Andrews Boulevard in Panama City. Dr. Sherry Brown helps people heal naturally with chiropractic adjustments and deep tissue massage. Call 769-3777. All right, I'm going to get to it right now. This is the kind of stuff I love, actually, is learning about things like this. And I can't wait to share this with you. The video you can find on YouTube, I usually type in types of government explained by the John Birch Society. But let's get to it right now.
When Benjamin Franklin exited the Constitutional Convention, he was asked by a woman, "Sir, what have you given us?" His immediate response was, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." Yet most Americans today have been persuaded that our nation's governmental system is a democracy and not a republic. The difference between these two is essential in understanding Americanism and the American system. Before we discuss political systems, however, it's helpful to address the confusion that has been spread about the political spectrum. Many have been led to believe that the political spectrum places groups such as communists on the far left, fascists or dictators on the far right, and political moderates or centrists in the middle. However, a more accurate political spectrum will show government having zero power on the far right to having 100% power on the far left. At the extreme right, there is no government. The extreme left features total government under such labels as communism, socialism, Nazism, fascism, princes, potentates, dictators, kings, any form of total government. Those who claim that Nazis and fascists are right-wing never define their terms. This amounts to spreading confusion. Toward the middle of the political spectrum can be found the type of government limited to its proper role of protecting the rights of the people. That's where the Constitution of the United States is. Those who advocate such a form of government are really constitutional moderates. So let's analyze the basic forms of government. They are monarchy or dictatorship ruled by one, oligarchy ruled by a few, democracy ruled by a majority, republic ruled by law, and anarchy, which is ruled by no one. In discussing these five, we'll see that they can be narrowed down to even fewer. Looking first at monarchy or dictatorship, this form of government doesn't really exist in the practical sense. It's always a group that puts one of its members up front. A king has his council of nobles or earls, and every dictator has his bureaucrats or commissars, the men behind the scenes. This isn't ruled by one, even though one person may be the visible leader. It's ruled by a group. So let's eliminate monarchy, dictatorship, because it never truly exists. Oligarchy, which is ruled by a group, is the most common form of government in all history. And it is the most common form of government today. Most of the nations of the world are ruled by a powerful few, and therefore oligarchy remains. At the other end, we find anarchy, which means without government. Some people have looked over history and found that many of its worst crimes were committed by governments. So they decided that having no government might be a good idea. But this is a mistake, because as the ancient Greeks stated, without law, there can be no freedom. Our founding fathers agreed and held that some amount of government is a necessary force in any civilized, orderly society. In a state of anarchy, however, everyone has to guard life, liberty, and property, and the lives of family members. Everyone must be armed, and movement is severely restricted because one's property has to be protected at all times. Civilized people have always hired someone to do the guarding, a sheriff, a police force, or some branch of government. Once law enforcement was in place, the people were freer. They could leave their property, work in the fields, and so on. In short, the proper amount of government makes everyone freer. There are some who advocate anarchy, however, not because they want no government, but because they don't like what they have. They use anarchy as a tool for revolutionary change. The condition of anarchy is very much like a vacuum where something rushes in to fill it. These calculating anarchists work to break down the existing government with rioting, killing, looting, and terrorism. Tragically, the people living in such chaos often go to those best able to put an end to it and beg them to take over and restore order. And who is best able to put an end to the chaos? The very people who started it. The anarchists who created the problem then create a government run by them, an oligarchy, where they have total power. This is exactly what happened in Russia that led to Lenin taking total power, and in Germany, where Hitler's brown shirts created the chaos that brought him to power. But anarchy isn't a stable form of government. It's a quick transition from something that exists to something desired by the power-hungry. It's a temporary condition, and because it isn't permanent, we eliminate it as well. The word democracy comes from two Greek words, demos, meaning people, and kratein, meaning to rule. Democracy, therefore, means the rule of the people, majority rule. This, of course, sounds good, but suppose the majority decides to take away one's home, or business, or children. Obviously, there has to be a limit. The flaw in democracy is that the majority isn't restrained. If more than half the people can be persuaded to want something in a democracy, they rule. What about republic? Well, that comes from the Latin, res meaning thing, and publica meaning public. It means the public thing, the law. A true republic is one where the government is limited by law, leaving the people alone. America's founders had a clean slate to write on. They could have set up an oligarchy. In fact, there were some who wanted George Washington to be their king. But the founding fathers knew history, and they chose to give us the rule of law in a republic, not the rule of a majority in a democracy. Why? Let's demonstrate the difference in the setting of the Old West. Consider a lynch mob in a democracy. 30
I had a great debate one time, but with a professor at Troy University. He said that the difference between a republic and a democracy is really just what did he call it? A difference without a meaning or something. And so we had a debate on the radio. It was really quite something, and it came down to the fact that he thinks that we got our rights from people, the majority, whereas I think we were born with those rights. And I think that law, the rule of law in a republic, limits the government, not the people. Oh man, this is so interesting stuff. And it's so much, it explains things so much better, in my opinion, when you're trying to understand government, when you're seeking wisdom, right? And understanding and discernment. This right-left stuff doesn't explain so much. All right, I want to get back to this. This Wild West discussion, explaining the difference between a democracy and a republic, is absolutely awesome. And I'm going to share it with you right after this.
It's a hot time in Florida, and my friend Ryan could make sure your air conditioning is running at peak efficiency. He could even install a new one, built to a higher standard, American standard. Find out more at PCAirrepair.com.
You want to look good? You want to feel good? Little John's Big and Tall is where it's at. Right across the street from Sky's Pizza Pie, 5700 North Davis Highway. You can find out more online at littlejohnsbigandtall.com. He's also a member of the iTex trading community, where your iTex dollars are welcome.
All right, back to it. So a monarchy really doesn't exist, right? There's never really just one person ruling everybody else. There's really a group of people, right? He has his bureaucrats or whatever, right? So it's more of an oligarchy ruled by a few, which is where I think we are today. Anarchy doesn't last, transitional period. So let's take a look at really the distinction, a distinction without a difference. That's what the professor of Troy called it. Calling it a republic is just a distinction without a difference. No, it's a distinction with a big difference, and an important difference that the video is going to explain right now. The difference between a republic and a democracy. All right, here we go.
Let's demonstrate the difference in the setting of the Old West. Consider a lynch mob in a democracy. 35 horseback riders chase one lone gunman. They catch him, and they vote 35-1 to hang him. Democracy has triumphed, and there's one less gunman to contend with. Now consider the same scenario in a republic. The 35 horseback riders catch the gunman and vote 35-1 to hang him, but the sheriff arrives, and he says, "You can't kill him. He's got his right to a fair trial." So they take the gunman back to town. A jury of his peers is selected, and they hear the evidence and the defense, and they decide if he shall hang. Does the jury even decide by majority rule? No, it has to be unanimous or he goes free. The rights of the government aren't subject to majority rule, but to the law. This is the essence of a republic. Many Americans would be surprised to learn that the word democracy does not appear in the Declaration of Independence or the U.S. Constitution, nor does it appear in any of the constitutions of the 50 states. The founders did everything they could to keep us from having a democracy. James Madison, rightly known as the father of the Constitution, wrote in essay number 10 of the Federalist Papers, "Democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths." Alexander Hamilton agreed, and he stated, "We are a republican government. Real liberty is never found in despotism or in the extremes of democracy." Samuel Adams, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, stated, "Democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself." The founders had good reason to look upon democracy with contempt, because they knew that the democracies in the early Greek city-states produced some of the wildest excesses of government imaginable. In every case, they ended up with mob rule, then anarchy, and finally tyranny under an oligarchy. During that period in Greece, there was a man named Solon who urged creation of a fixed body of law not subject to majority whims. But where the Greeks never adopted Solon's wise counsel, the Romans did. Based on what they knew of Solon's laws, they created the 12 tables of the Roman law and, in effect, built a republic that limited government power and left the people alone. Since government was limited, the people were free to produce, with the understanding that they could keep the fruits of their labor. In time, Rome became wealthy and the envy of the world. In the midst of plenty, however, the Roman people forgot what freedom entailed. They forgot that the essence of freedom is the proper limitation of government. When government power grows, people freedom recedes. Once the Romans dropped their guard, power-seeking politicians began to exceed the powers granted them in the Roman Constitution. Some learned that they could elect politicians who would use government power to take property from some and give it to others. Agriculture subsidies were introduced, followed by housing and welfare programs. Inevitably, taxes rose and controls over the private sector were imposed. Soon, a number of Rome's producers could no longer make ends meet, and they went on the dole. Productivity declined, shortages developed, and mobs began roaming the streets, demanding bread and circuses from the government. Many were induced to trade freedom for security. Eventually, the whole system came crashing down. They went from a republic to a democracy and ended up with an oligarchy under a progression of the Caesars. Thus, democracy itself is not a stable form of government. Instead, it is the gradual transition from limited government to the unlimited rule of an oligarchy. Knowing this, we as Americans are ultimately left with only two choices. We can keep our republic, as Franklin put it, or we will inevitably end up with an oligarchy, a tyranny of the elite.
Isn't that great? If you want to find that video on YouTube, I just usually type in types of government explained or something like that. It was put out by the John Birch Society, which is a nonprofit that is does constitutional activism. But that's the way I view government. I don't view it as right-left type stuff. Now, I understand we live in the world we live in, and we have two major political parties, contrary to George Washington's warning about political factions. I get it. But really, wouldn't you agree? Let me look at your comments. Wouldn't you agree that right now we are living under an oligarchy ruled by a few? And is it getting worse or is it getting better? It all starts with understanding, which was the main reason I started doing what I do. It was the main reason that I started doing the radio show in 2007, January 2007. I wanted to impart some of what I learned, just like it was imparted to me by people like Dennis Prager and Larry Elder, Walter Williams, Thomas Sowell. I could go on and on. And what I found amazing when I did the radio show, and my mom used to talk about this. She used to listen to the radio show from California. And she used to say, isn't it crazy that you're on the radio trying to convince people that they're free and they're arguing with you that they don't want to be free? You know, on Facebook not too long ago, about a year ago, something like that, there was this lady that showed up and started making very partisan arguments. She hated Donald Trump, and it was during the election. And you remember the election that went on for weeks, you know, that one. It was then, and she would come on, and I was trying to find common ground with her, which is what I usually do when somebody comes on with a disagreement, because what I really liked on the radio was when ideas collide and reason prevails. Those were the days. What am I, Archie Bunker? Those were the days when ideas would collide and reason would prevail. But now reason has given way to meme logic, right? LOL. Anyway, I said, well, I understand. To this lady, I was going back and forth with her on my show page. And I said, well, at least we could probably agree that we both value liberty, right? At least we believe in liberty. And she said, liberty is what the privileged use to keep the oppressed down. That's what she said. Liberty. Liberty is just a word that the privileged use. All right, I want to see what you're saying. Wow, I'm seeing some cool faces here. My main man, Juan. Oligarchy is, I agree. Yeah, the video's great, Juan. I go back, I watch that video because I always, for a few reasons. I want to remember that way, that paradigm of viewing government. But I always forget about the Greek by the name of Solon, who came up with this idea that we ought to be ruled by law, the rule of law. And what is the rule of law? I used to always say this to the Panama City Beach City Council, and they used to get so mad when I would say it. Riekert would start flipping out. Mike Thomas would start, lean back and stare at me. Hector Solis would start clicking his pen like this. You always know when Hector was mad because you could hear that. Or if I was playing poker with him, I'd wipe him out. That's called a tell, right? And I used to always say the rule of law at least demands two things. One, that you treat everybody equally, equal application of the law. Whether you like us or not, whether you like our business or not, equal application of the law. All Americans, All residents should be treated the same by their government, right? The second thing, though, the less known thing about the rule of law is that they don't change the rules along the way so that we can plan our lives and run our businesses. We cannot plan our lives and run our businesses if they change the rules all the time. And local governments can do that fast, which is why local government is where we can make the fastest and biggest change. Just ask Jeff McConnell. And you didn't think we had a chance. I knew we had a chance on that. And we have another chance in 2 years, and it's going to be a big one. And things are going to change, especially now that people know it can happen. There's something about hope. There's something about seeing it one time, right? Have you ever played golf? And that one time you hit the ball and it just goes 270 yards. You go, oh, I love this game. Now, I've never been able to do that, so I've just heard about it. Listen, I could put a basketball in a hoop, right? I can catch a football. But when I played golf, it was like I had instant cerebral palsy. I mean, I just was terrible at it. I'm just telling you, I was terrible at it. But if I'd have hit it one time and it went 300, is it 300 feet or 300 yards? It's got to be feet, right? I don't know. But there's something about hope. There's something about doing it one time and you go, holy shnikes, we can do this. Yeah, we can do this. We might even do it in August when it comes to the state representative. When people realize that there's a choice beyond the good old boy choice, when we don't have to go with the Arthur Cullen candidate. Who's that? Griff Griffiths. That's the county commissioner. We already know what Griff Griffiths is about. But if you really want constitutional carry in the state of Florida, we have to have a state representative who doesn't bow to Disney. Because Disney, oh my God, Disney basically funds these guys with their PACs, their political action committees. And Disney doesn't want constitutional carry in the state of Florida. That's why Jay Trumbull, in the last 8 years would never, ever vote. That's why Florida doesn't have constitutional carry, because of people like Jay Trumbull, who at his core believes in it, but he's not going to piss off Disney. How the hell would he get elected to the Senate if he does? I mean, do you want somebody that's going to represent you or represent Disney? You have a choice in Brian Cloudis. When you vote for Griff Griffiths, you might as well be voting for Arthur Cullen, because they will do whatever Disney and the rest of them tell them to do. And they're only going there to bring back money for the contractor buddies. Griff Griffiths himself became a home builder after he became a county commissioner. Oh, it's nice work if you can get it. But it's about time we send somebody to the state house that is ready to represent the people, just like we saw in the video, right? What is a republic form of government? Well, it's a representative form of government. You know why? Because if we're got to have government, and we do, we the people should control it. But since we all can't meet at the same time under the same tree and figure out how we want government to work, because we've got jobs, some of us don't have jobs, some of us, I guess, get, government cheese and they can go peacefully protest for hours on end. I used to think about that during Occupy protest. Yeah, I used to think about it back then. Who remembers Occupy protest? Remember that? I used to think, wow, look at these guys camping out in these tents for 2 weeks, finding, you watch the videos of that. And it seemed like I'd always say, this guy just comes out of this girl's tent. She's 26, but she's got the mental capacity of a 14-year-old. And it's always some, old homeless guy coming out of the tent saying, down with corporations. Now they're all for big pharma. I don't get it. But I don't want to get into that right now. I used to watch that and think, damn, we're funding our own demise. We can't go protest for 2 weeks because we're paying them to do it. You want to straighten this country out? we knock that out right away, right? You can go protest all you want, but you got to buy your own stuff. That'll fix it lickety split. Can I get an amen? All right, enough of that. How did I get into all that? The representative form of government. It is time that we do what we did about a month ago when we replaced Jeff McConnell with Mary Coburn. They're freaking out because Mary Coburn wants to save the Gulf of Mexico. Mary Coburn doesn't want new and higher assessments, no matter what they offer her, no matter what they tell her, unless the information shows that it is beneficial for everybody. So we have to have an open mind. And I know she does. But, circling the wagons, that's over in Panama City Beach. It needs to be over in Tallahassee, in the capital. We want constitutional carry, and we want it now, damn it, because we already should have it. That's what the supreme law of the land says. All right. Boy. Yes, we need candidates who can't be bought. Michelle, amen. Love of money is the root of all evil. Not some of the evil, but all evil. I don't agree with that one all the way. Love of money is the root of all evil. I'll say it's the root of a hell of a lot. I'm with you on that. Cloudis, says Brian Gray. Lynn Haven has an opportunity. April 2nd. In April, 2 commissioners. Okay, I see what you're saying. In April, 2 commissioners and a mayor seat open. That's a big deal. Brian, you need to run again. You need to run again. That's right, Michelle. We can agree to disagree. Yes. It's like the old days. You mean one thing and you're not out of here? All right. So I'm going to wrap it up. I have so much. I do need to tell you this. I do need to tell you this about the Lynn Haven corruption case. Today was the deadline for developer James Finch and former mayor Margo Anderson to turn in their final rebuttal to Chief Judge Mark Walker. Chief Judge Mark Walker. Today's the final day. They had to turn it in today. So now Judge Walker will decide on the motion to dismiss the whole case, whether it goes to trial or whether the government violated the defendant's Sixth Amendment guarantee, the right to attorney-client privilege, whether or not he'll decide whether or not the prosecution and the investigators gave false information to the grand jury in a reckless and dishonest manner enough times in order to get indictments. Did they do that? There are several things. That the judge will look at. And you want to know something? Remember, I went to the evidentiary hearings. I saw the evidence. You've got the charges against Mayor Anderson and James Finch. And the evidence did not match the charges. Oh, there's a lot of corruption in Lynn Haven. City attorney, foremost, Adam Albritton, he's the most guilty of the guilty, in my opinion. He was the one advising, his job was to advise the city and the council members and the mayor what's legal and what's not legal. But he was too busy writing up contracts to put $10,000 a week in his pocket as a kickback from ECS. $10,000 a week for 12 weeks. He got $120,000 in cash. He's the most guilty of the guilty. The people who have committed the crimes have pled guilty. 2 people haven't. And if it goes to trial and there's evidence that shows the guilt on the charges, I'm going to tell you. But so far, I haven't seen it. And I predict in the course of about any time from here on out, because today was the deadline, from here on out, Judge Walker will take a look at the pleadings and decide whether or not this case gets thrown out after all of the mistakes and worse than mistakes. I mean, the prosecutors, by the way, have already gotten 2 or 3 bites at the apple.
They've already gone back to the grand jury. They've already had entire gigantic portions of indictments thrown out by the judge, and they came back with nearly the same charges. If I'm a betting man, and I am, I'm betting that Judge Walker dismisses the case. And it's my belief, based on information and belief. That's a legal term. It's my belief that the investigators and the prosecutors don't want to go to trial. Not now. Not now that the judge released the transcripts of what was told to the grand jury, and it was bad. It was not true. And the notes, the investigator notes that never came, the evidence that could be exculpatory that was never given to the defendants, or that was given very late, even after the judge adjourned the evidentiary hearing. Oh my God, it's so bad. How could it be so bad? It was. So I would say probably, I'm just going to guess 2 weeks. We're going to find out if it goes to trial or if it's dismissed. Now, if it's dismissed in Lynn Haven, the prosecution has the opportunity to file an appeal on the judge's ruling on the motion to dismiss, right? They can still appeal that. But I don't think they will. I don't think they want to go to trial. I don't think they want to take the stand. That's just, I could be wrong. This is my opinion now, based on the information that I have, which is, again, about this much out of that much. But from what I've seen inside of here, holy smokes, it's bad for the government. So we'll see. That's coming to a head. So I'll keep you informed on that, and I'll be there at the if the judge calls a hearing to make the announcement, the ruling, I'll be there, as long as he permits it. I think he will. And if it goes to trial, I'll be there. So I'll tell you what I see. All right. I'm going to wrap it up, like I keep saying I'm going to do. Thank you for being with me. And if you want to take part in helping make people's lives better through public policy that expands people's choices, there is a great organization in Florida called the James Madison Institute. Take a look. Americans for Prosperity is the largest grassroots organization advancing policies that help people improve their lives. AFP Florida seeks to end corporate welfare, expand energy options, and reform education and healthcare by giving people more choices. Sign up today and volunteer at americansforprosperity.org. And if you want to support my work, you can. My show's independent, and it relies on your generosity and sponsors. That's the reason I can tell you what I believe, because I don't work for the news outlets who are public-private partners with the local politicians. So you can become a patron right here at patreon.com/Bernie Thompson. And you can, that's like giving a tip, as little as $5 a month. And you can quit at any time, and it's anonymous and it's easy. Patreon.com/Bernie Thompson. It means a lot to me. Those of you who are patrons, thank you. It's called crowdfunding. Thank God for it. And also, as always, a big thank you to the Unknown Patriot. It's like the Gong Show. I always think of the Gong Show. Remember the Unknown Comic? Well, this is the Unknown Patriot, and I'm very grateful. All right. Thank you for being with me. I will see you back here soon. I'm not sure exactly when, but I'll see you soon. I'm going to keep you fully apprised on the Lynn Haven corruption case.